Hi everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. We're looking at Jay's Super 2. This is a late model, very late Super 2. Serial code there is an O, which is going to put this around 92, 93, somewhere in there, I think. Very close to there. So this one, it's like they changed them every 5 minutes. This one has the primer bulb that's mounted over here. It does not have an adjustable automatic oiler, but it does have the oil pump mounted off of the carburetor. Now, these things weren't used for that long. They apparently weren't that reliable, and I've run into that on this saw. That's why it's on the bench. Jay had tried a multitude of times to get it oiling, and it just wouldn't go. Now at the moment I can drill test it and it's pumping oil, but I thought I'd go through this for a minute, kind of how this routing works, how the oil system works, and why it's an issue. So you got a bundle of hoses, and at first it looks pretty fugly, but you just gotta kind of work through it. We're gonna go through the fuel side first. So you've got your primer there. That means you've got you've got two ports on that primer. The inlet side is on the side, the outlet is in the middle. So the purpose of a primer bulb is to purge air from the carburetor. Fill that circuit with gasoline, with mixed fuel. So the primer port is on the metal part of the carburetor. That is going to be your inlet, so this goes on that outer side. Your outlet is just a return line into the tank. This has nothing on the other end. It's just sitting in there. Your fuel inlet is the lower hole, and it goes down to the barb right there. So that takes care of the fuel. It's real simple. When you press that primer bulb, it draws fuel into the carburetor, out into the purge bulb, and then the purge bulb expels air and then fuel back into the tank. Once you have a good solid primer bulb full and you're pulling fuel and not air, that's when you know you've got it primed. I think this probably says 5. Well, it doesn't say. And there's no instructions on the tank, but usually it's 3 to 5 pumps. Not important. It is what it is. Alright, so to the reason it's on the bench, the oil pump. So this thing, these revised intake manifolds on these late model saws, you can't interchange gaskets with the early stuff. I've tried to put notes in all of my products that are even remotely associated with this, but there are still guys that order this gasket to go with an old 65016 carburetor gasket, and I can guarantee you that will not work. Not happening. Won't work. This revised intake has 2 holes in it for pulse. One is for the carburetor, the other is channeled up into this block, and it's a pressure line. Well, actually, it's dual purpose. It's a pressure line to pressurize the ductbill, just like we've always done. Pressurizes the tank, which then forces pressurized oil out and up to the oil pump right there. Now, once it's reached this oil pump, that's where the fun starts to begin. We never see the check valve on, or very seldom on the old style, where it's off here in the crankcase. It just very rarely failed. Now, on this one, I'm starting to believe this style either had a tolerance that was too tight, or some of the parts were shipped with Cosmoline, and it managed to get in there and jam that check valve up. because that's what was not working on this. It was stuck closed. So I had cleaned it out once, thought I was good to go. I could get flow through, and that's what you need. But in order for a pump to work, where you've got a diaphragm and a plunger coming up here, the plunger's got to go back far enough to let a fresh charge of oil in. That's why there's a spring under the diaphragm. Then the engine, as the piston is going up on a compression stroke, that's also your intake stroke. It's going to draw a fresh charge in here. It's creating a vacuum. So it's going to pull that diaphragm back, charge it with oil, and as the piston's coming back down, it's going to pressurize this side of the crankcase, and that's going to push that diaphragm back. So at that point, it goes past this inlet port and should push that check ball off its seat and expel oil. Well, that's where it wasn't doing anything. That check ball was stuck. And even after repeated cleanings, I still had that problem. Now, I may get this all back together and go, well, shit, it's stuck again. And if that's the case, then I'm going to assume that there's just something defective in here. I mean, it's possible that I could drive it out and inspect it, but I don't think so. I take that back. The machining was done from this end. I can't drive it out. That's not serviceable. If this is jacked, it's jacked. There's not a damn thing I can do about it. So that's some oil pump 101 that's a whole lot deeper than most of you probably want to go into. But if one of these things will not pump, you've got a good pressure line, good duckbill valve, that's when you need to start looking up here. A lot of people will find the hard-to-find diaphragm and replace it in the spring, and it still won't work. And it's because this body is what is giving the issue. So anyhow, that's where we're at. I think I'm going to get this thing mounted on the tripod, get it together, and hopefully we'll be doing a test run, and it'll be puking oil all over the bench. Hallelujah. I suppose having the muffler that close to the microphone probably overwhelmed it. God knows what that'll sound like on video, but there. See all that oil? It's finally pumping the way it should. So, that's good. I'm glad that it wasn't a defect in the machining itself that was not fixable. That would have been a real bummer. I guess I don't have another one of those laying around here to use as a prop, but that's what it was. Either garbage or cosmoline or something had stuck that check valve in the tip there. When I finally cleaned it, I actually took my baby vice grips and pulled those tubes out carefully so I could actually see the spring. And I was using my air nozzle alternating between brake cleaner and the air nozzle, being very careful and watching that spring actuate. So You can bench test it when you get done, but it's kind of a pain in the ass because the saw with the spark plug out does not generate much of a pulse in either direction. So what you can do is blow into the pressure line with it removed from the carb and prime up your oil pickup line until you see oil coming up almost to the end, then plug it in to the oil pump and then hook your pressure line up with the engine out of the case. You can spin it over with your drill, but in order to get much of a pulse, you kind of got to hold your finger not all the way over the spark plug hole, but enough that it's generating a little bit of compression, and then you can start to see the oil move. At least I could here. So yeah, finally I think we're there. I'm going to finish assembling the muffler shield, the hand guard, and then of course I'll let it sit for a couple days, fire it back up, and if it starts puking oil again on fire up, she's heading your way.